The question is, who is greater between Wizkid and Fela? I think it's clear. It's always going to be, some people would like to debate it, but Wizkid is great, but Fela is greater. Wizkid is a king, Fela is a god. Yeah, so I'm sure everyone has been seeing the ongoing beef between Kuti and Wizkid. Can we call it a beef? It is what it is, beef. And I mean, let's get down to the conversation. It's a matter of who's greater, Fela Kuti or Wizkid. For me, I think, I don't call it an unfortunate conversation because it's a conversation that shouldn't be happening, but since we're having the conversation, so yeah, let's go. Let's start with how great is Fela. I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding of how great Fela is, especially for people within the young generation. I would say people like maybe 30 and below, they don't really appreciate Fela's greatness. And a lot of people do reduce it to activism, be like, okay, his music wasn't all that. He was just an activist. That's what he's popular for. No, you're not correct. You're super, super wrong. Fela is a musical genius. Let's just start with that. This is a man who took funk, jazz music, was exposed to abroad, brought it back home, added Nigerian and African element, added the percussions, added the horns to it, added practically did a drum pattern, then added Nigerian lyrics, vocals, elements to it to make it Afrobeat. So he essentially created a genre of music. And he just didn't create that genre of music, he scaled it, he made it so popular. It was the dominant sound of the 70s, one of the dominant sounds of the 70s, like alongside Fuji, Akbala, High Life. He also exported it. It was huge internationally. He was known everywhere. He was performing in Belgium, in France, in the US, in the UK. People were coming to him. If you've had the privilege of watching Finding Fela documentary, you could see it on YouTube. Listen to what Paul McCartney of the Beatles had to say about Fela when he came to Lagos to record an album, came to Africa, visited Lagos. Fela said, you're here to see the black man's music. And he'd be like, no, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to just connect with the culture. I love Africa. I wanted to vibe with the sound. And he met up with Fela and explained himself. And Fela said, okay, that's okay. And he went to the shrine and he saw Fela perform for the first time. And he was so emotional that he burst into tears. He said that was the most powerful and beautiful music he's ever heard. You need to see where people, rappers, talk about Fela, how Fela has inspired them musically. Fela created a genre. Fela was a producer, he was a composer, he was a songwriter, he was a conductor. This is a man that was on stage, making live music, reproducing music live on stage, saying drums like this, the keys this way, the backup this way, the horns this way. He could play multiple instruments. He was a genius. You understand? I mean, he was a genius. Musically, the level he touched, it was only the greatest musicians in the world that could touch that level. You understand? He was that good. And he was not only making a sound that was critically acclaimed alone, they were also commercially successful. Like, for example, there's this article I read written by a guy named Mark Bond. So he was talking about his father. His father was the chairman of Phonogram Nigeria, a record label back in the 70s, with branches all over the world. Now, in 1976, Phonogram Nigeria made $70 million in sales, out of which $18 million was profit. That was the biggest margin of any branch in the world. And the record label had a lot of artists on their register in Nigeria. On their roster, they had Rex Lawson, Celestine Ugu, Chief Stephen Osadebi, Mike Ejiaga, a couple people, Yusuf Olatunji. They also had Fela. In 2 years, Fela's Zombie album sold over 500,000 copies. Now, this is not streaming or whatever. This is physical copies. Do you know what it means to push 500,000 copies in the 1970s? That's how huge Fela was commercially. He was a commercial juggernaut. He was huge commercially, and he knew how to make music. I'm tired of people saying the music, he made protest music, he made conscious music. Fela made all type of music, and the music were great. They were musical, they were artistically accomplished. He was molding melodies. Who do you think was writing all those songs? When his backup was singing, me and you know they for the same category. Who do you think was doing that? It was Fela writing each and every one of those melodies, conjuring them. So I can get a bit agitated when I feel like we have been subjected to defense Fela's legacy, especially musically. He was huge. He made over 50 albums, song after song after song, album after album, successful, relevant. So yeah, musically, Fela was a genius. He was second to none musically. And now let's talk about, there's no way we'll talk about his greatness without talking about how he applied himself beyond the ordinary man. Fela was just not anybody. Fela was, in my opinion, a god. He's a deity. If Fela was born 1,000 years ago, he would be worshipped as one of the pantheons of the musical deity. He did what the ordinary man couldn't do. He was musically successful, and he applied himself beyond just being human. He gave everything for he gave everything for humanity. He sacrificed it all on the altar of black consciousness. This is a man who led from the front line. He didn't only look the military government in the eyes and made music that was critical of them. He led protests. He fought for the people. Some people will say, yeah, Fela was, there's this narrative that, Fela smoked weed. Fela surrounded himself with degenerates. He fought mostly for the right for him to live as he wanted to live. You're not wrong. Fela fought for the right to live on his own terms. He also fought for the right of everyone to live free, fair, and with dignity. Since he was young, he was asked to study medicine, he chose to study music. He's always wanted to live the way he wanted to live. And if that means marrying 27 women in a day, smoking weed, and performing in his underwear, he fought for that right. But that's not the only place he stopped. He didn't just fight for the right to want to live free, marry multiple women, smoke weed. He fought for social justice. He called out corruption. He fought for the people. Kalakuta was a safe haven. You need to read his book, This Beach of a Life by Carlos Moore. People were showing up from different places. One of his wife ran away from home because she was being maltreated, and she knew if she gets to Fela's shrine, she'll be protected. People were abandoning their families out of like turmoil, or they didn't fit in, or they were poor, they're struggling, and they go to Fela's shrine. It was feeding people. It was putting people through school. It's documented. So this narrative that it was a bad example is not true. Even if his struggle was not appreciated during his lifetime, in insight, history has been kind to him. And history still needs to be kinder to him, because we can only imagine what it means to have done what he has. Like the sacrifices he made, it's unimaginable. This is a man that was arrested more than 200 times, dogged, spent time in prison, lost his mother to the struggle. Are you guys kidding me? This is a conversation of how great Fela is. Look at how everyone talks about Fela. Alicia Keys, Beyonce, Jay-Z. This is a man that did documentaries about him. There's a Broadway show about him. Spike Lee sat down to watch that show multiple times. It's called The Black President. Multiple times in New York, Broadway. There's no African artist touching the hem of his garments in terms of how he applied himself, of what he sacrificed for humanity. That's greatness. That's what takes a man from being ordinary to God status. So there's no metric we want to use when we talk about Fela that is not head and shoulders above every other person. Yes, he's a musical genius. Yes, there are other musical geniuses. King Sunny Ade was special musically. Osadebe was special musically. William Oyabo was special musically. But Fela went beyond music. Fela is beyond music. Fela is consciousness. Fela speaks to the conscience of justice wherever you may be it in Cuba, be it in Brazil, be it in the UK. So yeah, that's how great he is. As far as I'm concerned, there's nobody greater than Fela when it comes to music. So he's been compared with Wizkid, and this conversation makes it look like Wizkid is being discredited. I don't think that's the case, especially not for me, because Wizkid is great. Wizkid is as great as it can ever possibly come in Nigerian contemporary music. I think there's no way you'd argue who is the greatest Afrobeat artist that his name will not come in top 3. And there's no way you put anyone above him that is not debatable. He's arguably the greatest Nigerian contemporary artist of all time. His peers, like the people you compare him with, Tubaba, Davido, Burna Boy, possibly the band P-Square. But that Wizkid will not be called is possibly number 1. Is that great? Wizkid expanded Nigerian pop music. Tubaba gave Nigerian pop music structure, identity. Taught us how to make music that should sound like this. The structure should be like this. You could infuse this, infuse that, clean it up, make it more appealing. P-Square did the same thing. They brought finesse. They brought like that swagger, that American swagger to the music video. The band taught us how to make homegrown hit songs, bring the Nigerianness. It doesn't always have to be funny and this and that. Make it more Nigerian, make it more catchy, make it more Lamba-like. Wandeko brought, modern structure to it, make it more pop feel. Like the way you arrange the music, the way you deliver the sounds, the way you tell the stories, the narrative. Then Wizkid like expanded it for a new generation. Since he dropped Superstar, he's been at the forefront of Afrobeats, pushing boundaries, opening the doors. He's single-handedly, mostly, he has led the Wizkid has led the reimagination and the rebranding of the African youth on the global scene. So this is who he is. He's great. You cannot talk about Afrobeat without Wizkid. Wizkid is great. Wizkid is monumental. Wizkid is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, contemporary African artists in the whole world. You understand? So it's not, nobody's debating his greatness or squaring up against the Fela Kuti. So yeah, that's, I don't know, man. I don't know. That's unacceptable for me. The question is, who is greater between Wizkid and Fela? I think it's clear. It's always going to be, some people would like to debate it, but Wizkid is great, but Fela is greater. Wizkid is a king, Fela is a god. Wizkid might become a god someday, but in terms of the pantheon of gods, Fela was there before you ever joined him. Fela has been there. He's always going to be there. We're talking about a man who is considered one of the greatest Africans to ever live. I'm not talking about one of the greatest African musicians to ever live. Fela is one of the greatest Africans to ever walk the surface of the earth. I'm talking about the Pharaohs, the Imhotep, the Mandela, you understand? The Mansa Musas. I put him in that category of Africans that have walked the surface of the earth. If Fela was born 1,000 years ago, he would be worshipped as a god. Fela had everything. Multiple wives, the way a god would have it. Musical genius, the way a god would have it. Courage, the way God would have it. And it was flawed because gods are flawed. I mean, Obatala drank palm wine and got fucking drunk when he was supposed to come create the world. Shango had anger issues. It's what? Gods are not. Zeus had flaws. Achilles had his flaws. Gods had flaws. And Fela has flaws. So I'm telling you, I consider that man a god because what he did, the ordinary human mind cannot comprehend. You cannot carry one person and put it next to him. Possibly the only person that compares remotely close to Fela, like they share the same status is Bob Marley, because what they did was beyond music. They applied themselves to humanity the way the average musician couldn't apply himself. So yes, that's it for me. It's clear. Wizkid is great. He's one of the greatest. But there's none that has done what Fela has done in music and for humanity. So the bottom line is, what should we learn from this? I think the first thing would be, comparisons are not new. And it's not isolated to Nigeria alone. It's not a Nigerian problem. Michael Jackson or Chris Brown has been compared to Michael Jackson consistently. Who's better? Even Tank, an R&B artist, a musician, choose Chris Brown over Michael Jackson and he gave his reason. It's debates, and although Chris Brown has consistently told his fans not to compare him to MJ. Beyonce's fans have compared her to everybody. MJ, Elvis Presley, the Beatles, Tupac, even God. They've compared Beyonce to God, the Beehive. There's nobody they've not. They've compared her to C. Ronaldo, and he's not even a fucking musician. You understand? So that's it. Kendrick Lamar has been compared to Tupac. Recently, Jermaine Dupri, the producer, the Grammy-winning, the critically renowned producer, called Nipsey also Jesus. That's what it is. It's how people will compare someone they consider great to who they consider the epitome of greatness. And in terms of, in Nigeria, Wizkid is who his fans consider great. And when they look at, okay, who can we consider the greatest, it's Fela Kuti. And they're going to want to compare him to Fela Kuti. Sometimes this can be done in a disrespectful way, in a non-academic way, in a way that doesn't respect. I don't think there's a way you compare Fela to anyone, except you want to do it in an academic discourse in terms of music, in terms of being pioneering, in terms of how much mileage you give a sound and how much artistic value you brought into a genre and defined that genre and expanded it to become so impactful that it's been carried on for generations. If you want to have that kind of academic discourse, it makes some sense. You talk about the likes of King Sunny Adi, Osadebe Oliver the Cook, Victor Weifo, William Onyabo. These are great people. Yusuf Olatunji. There's this Hausa man, I've forgotten his name now. It's just really great. I think Mamman something. I think I've forgotten his name. These are the people. Okay, that's an academic discourse. We're weighing artistic contribution to music. But in terms of legacy, I just don't. It's going to come off somewhat disrespectful, even if that's not the intention. So how do you manage this? How do you navigate this? And that's where I think Seun Kuti kind of made a mistake, because he overly engaged a group of Wizkid fans. Because at the end of the day, it's not all of them. It's just a group of Wizkid fans that were bent on having this conversation, and they derive pleasure in making you spiral. These are the people like they have all the time in the world. They are going to keep coming at you and you cannot win. Yeah, you can have your say, you can match them rant for rant, but you're not going to win. And it's going to get to the point where you would just bring disrepute to what you're trying to protect. It's what it is. And that's what happened. Because it was almost as if Fela Kuti was finding Wizkid's mouth, like he wanted him to say something. And it got to the point where you start having like a bit of personal jabs at Wizkid. Yes, Wizkid is silent. Wizkid didn't say anything to his fans, didn't ask them to stop. But you cannot deny the fact that Wizkid respects Fela, which is just why this whole thing is sad. Because, he has Fela tattooed on his body. He's talked consistently about how he adores Fela. He's made music that samples Fela. He's featured Fela Kuti. He's been at Felabration. This is a man that adores Fela. So when you kept going at FC and you started like taking personal jabs at him, it's like you wanted him to say something, which he did, unfortunately, and goofed and talked about, okay, now I'm getting on Fela, what next? Maybe out of anger, out of wanting to defend himself. So we got here because Fela Kuti, with all due respect to him, is a grown man. He's a genius in his own right. We can't be scolding a grown man, but I feel like he gave too much attention to what's not worth the attention, and that's what got us where we are. So yeah, and it's unfortunate. So for me, if a legend is being compared with someone else, say tomorrow now, someone as iconic as Osadebe is being compared to another artist, how do you address that? If you want to address it categorically, say, okay, this is who Osadebe is. This is what he did. He made a music that Charlie Poppy can be sampling 30 years later. That's what he is, the staying power of his music, the staying power of his legacy. You address it and you move on, not you keep going, this and that, who is your father, this and that, you fatherless children, this and that. It just makes mockery, it turns it into a spectacle. It doesn't flatter anyone involved. It's a mockery, it insults the intelligence of everyone involved, your own intelligence and the legacy of who you're trying to protect. So you don't give oxygen to this kind of behavior. So that's it. And another major takeaway is that there's a bit of like lack of history, like appreciation of history. There's this idea, especially among young people, that whatever is being done now is greater than what has been done in the past. That's not true. Nigerian artists in the 70s did madness. They did madness. Was it this woman? Forgotten the person's name, who performed in Japan. Was performing in Japan. Paul McCartney was coming to Nigeria to see Fela. Ginger Baker, who is considered the first superstar drummer in rock music, came to Lagos, hung out with Fela, made music with Fela. Was this King Sunny Ade when Island Record lost Bob Marley and wanted to replace him with someone they think can make music that can sell globally? They pick Sunny Ade. All these labels, they've been here before. They've sold millions and millions of records. These artists have done impactful things. King Sunny Ade got the first Grammy nomination in the 80s. So it's not new. These people have done great things, but because it's not well documented, there's a lack of appreciation for it. I think everyone needs to go back in time and read a bit of history, at least based on whatever you can find. Go to YouTube, there are documentaries. Go and read up on a man called William Onyabo that was making funk music that was rivaling what was being made in the UK and the US in the 70s and 80s. It's called a fantastic man. Read up on these people. These people are geniuses, right? Give them their credit. Find inspiration in them. We need to appreciate history more, because if we appreciate history more, we'll get to understand who Fela was and what he did for humanity. So overall, and I think as Nigerians, we should also be willing and ready to tell the world that many are great, but there's no one greater than Fela and Nicola Pokuti. And that's facts on me.